What if the Night King had chosen differently? What if, instead of heading to Winterfell, he set his sights on King's Landing first? 1 million lives, gone in an instant. The very heart of Westeros under siege by an unstoppable army of the dead. Could Cersei's arrogance have sealed the fate of the Seven Kingdoms? Could Daenerys' thirst for the Iron Throne blind her to an even greater threat? And what would Jon Snow do when faced with an impossible choice? Protect the North, or save the realm's capital from annihilation? This is the moment that changes everything. The alliances, the betrayals, the sacrifices, reimagined. What if the Night King attacked King's Landing first? Let's dive into a tale of ice and fire like you've never imagined before. The cold winds howled through the ruins of the wall as the Night King led his army southward. He paused for a moment, his icy gaze scanning the horizon. His undead forces were immense, but his ambition demanded more. King's Landing, a city teeming with life, ripe for his taking. A chilling smile crept across his face as he commanded his army to march towards the capital. In Winterfell, Jon Snow sat by the hearth, his brow furrowed. Why would they go south? He asked Bran, who sat motionless, his expression inscrutable. Bran's voice was eerily calm as he replied, "They're afraid of me now. The Night King senses my growing power. He seeks to avoid a direct confrontation until he is stronger." Jon's face darkened. "We can't let them grow their numbers. If they take King's Landing, the Seven Kingdoms will be lost." Daenerys, seated nearby, looked up sharply. "Cersei betrayed us. She refused to send her armies north. Why should we risk everything to save her city?" "Because it's not about her," Jon argued. "It's about survival. If we don't act, we're all dead." Sansa interjected, her voice laced with concern. "We don't have enough food to feed anyone beyond the north. We're already struggling to house Daenerys' army." Jon sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Then we send ravens. Tell anyone willing to live to come to Winterfell. We'll figure out the rest later." As the Night King's army closed in on King's Landing, Daenerys had a vision in the flames. Her eyes widened in horror and rage as she saw the cities fall. "Burn them all," she muttered, her voice trembling with intensity. Without hesitation, she mounted Drogon and flew southward, leaving her advisors scrambling in confusion. From above, she unleashed fire and fury upon the city, reducing it to ash before the Night King could add its inhabitants to his ranks. The Night King, unfazed, turned his attention north once more. Meanwhile, Cersei, who had escaped the carnage, arrived at Winterfell, feigning alliance but plotting her next move. Daenerys, unhinged from the destruction she wrought, imprisoned Cersei upon her arrival, though the Queen Regent began weaving schemes even from her cell. As the undead army approached Winterfell, tensions ran high. Daenerys' descent into madness became a gradual but chilling revelation. In the days leading up to the battle, her temper grew shorter, her decisions more erratic. She often muttered to herself, speaking in fragmented phrases about fire, betrayal, and destiny. Tyrion noticed her obsession with Bran, whom she accused of withholding secrets vital to their survival. Meanwhile, Bran offered cryptic warnings to Jon, hinting at the inevitability of choices driven by forces beyond their control. On the eve of battle, Daenerys stood by the flames, her eyes glinting with a mix of desperation and conviction. Her visions had grown darker, her whispers to herself more frenzied. "The fire must purge them all," she muttered, as Tyrion and Jon exchanged uneasy glances. During the chaos of the battle, Daenerys flew Drogon high above the battlefield, raining fire on the advancing undead. Yet her focus began to waver. "The Night King is the enemy of all," she whispered to herself, but the flames of her madness spoke louder. Her attacks became erratic, endangering her own forces. Tyrion, from the battlements, shouted in vain for her to stop. As Jon fought on the ground, rallying the living against overwhelming odds, he saw Drogon descend near Bran. Bran, seated stoically, looked up and locked eyes with Daenerys. She screamed, "It was you! You knew all of this!" and turned Drogon's fire toward the weirwood tree. Jon realized too late what she was doing. "Dany, no!" he cried, but the fire consumed the sacred tree and Bran's surroundings. In that moment, Bran warged into Drogon, halting the attack. Daenerys froze, her eyes filled with rage and confusion. Jon reached her on foot, pleading for her to see reason, but her mind was consumed by the flames of prophecy and vengeance. As the undead began to overwhelm their forces, Jon made the fateful decision. With tears streaming down his face, he plunged Longclaw into her chest, whispering, "Forgive me." As Daenerys fell, Drogon roared in anguish, his flames bursting into the heavens. Her blood seeped into the ground, and the flames on Jon's sword erupted anew, as if imbued by the fire of her life. Drogon turned his rage to the Night King, yet the undead general stood unmoving, his icy calm unbroken. The battle intensified. Ghost and Rhaegal joined Jon in his final stand. Jon, wielding the flaming sword, now pulsing with an otherworldly glow, faced the Night King in an epic duel. The icy foe mocked him with every strike, shattering Jon's defenses time and again. Each time Jon rose, propelled by memories of his vows as a brother of the Night's Watch, and by the haunting refrain of prophecies spoken in shadowed halls. The prince that was promised will stand against the darkness. At the brink of defeat, Jon's strength waned, and the Night King loomed above him, frost gathering on his blade for the killing blow. In that instant, Bran's voice echoed through Drogon, urging the dragon to unleash a torrent of fire. The flames struck the Night King, forcing him back, though they did not destroy him. This bought Jon a moment. Ghost lunged at the Night King, sinking his teeth into the ice, and Rhaegal struck with his claws. Jon, with the last of his strength, drove his flaming sword into the Night King's chest. The Night King froze, his body fracturing into jagged shards. As he shattered, Jon whispered, "We are the Watchers on the wall." The undead army collapsed, their dark magic extinguished. As the silence of the battlefield settled, Jon approached Bran, his face etched with confusion and exhaustion. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice strained. Bran's eyes were distant as he replied, "I am not Bran. I am the three-eyed raven." Jon stared at him, his brow furrowed, unable to comprehend the cryptic response. Before he could ask more, Bran's gaze shifted towards Drogon. Jon turned and made his way to Daenerys' lifeless body. Dropping to his knees, he embraced her, tears streaming down his face. He held her tightly, whispering apologies and mourning the weight of his decision. As he cradled her, a subtle shift occurred behind him. Bran unwarged from Drogon, and the great dragon, as if suddenly aware of himself, let out a low, mournful growl. Drogon approached Daenerys and Jon, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and sorrow. His gaze flickered briefly towards Bran, and for a moment he let out a low, guttural growl, his massive frame trembling as if overwhelmed by an unseen force. Drogon's wings unfurled hesitantly, his movements jittery and unsure. He stepped back, his attention darting nervously between Bran and the lifeless body of Daenerys. Finally, as though unable to bear Bran's presence, he turned away. With one last mournful look at Daenerys and Jon, Drogon released a heart-wrenching roar that echoed through the battlefield. The sound lingered in the cold air before the dragon launched himself into the sky, fleeing into the distant horizon. His silhouette faded, leaving behind the wreckage and the haunting reminder of what had been lost.